Hello there, I am Lady Loy. You can find me on Lovers Rock Radio 7 till 9 on Fridays and Gold Standard Radio on 7 till 9 on Saturdays. And today's video was inspired by two videos that I watched this morning. I found extremely disturbing, so I am going to share them with you. And I've called it When Intimacy Becomes a Transaction. And it's the difference between generosity, reciprocity, obligation, and control. So I watched and listened to two disturbing videos this morning. Disturbing because a lot of what was being said was partially true. Some because I felt it was generalization. And mostly because women were complaining about men and because a lot of men were admitting possessing the traits the women were complaining about. I wrote down some notes as I listened and found it sad in some places and became suspicious in others. It made me question how genuine are relationships today, i.e., is it really only about how men can benefit from being with a woman and nothing to do with how men can add to a woman's life? It left me wondering, if we are being taught to see the other sex as being somebody we need to protect ourselves from, how will we ever recognize somebody we can safely love? More importantly, what happens when distrust becomes the foundation upon which we build love and intimacy becomes a transaction? Intimacy becomes transactional when the relationship stops being about connection between two people and starts becoming about what each person can obtain from the other. For example, I cook, clean, and look after you, therefore you owe me loyalty. That's transactional. But so is, I pay all the bills, therefore you owe me obedience. Or, I have sex with you, therefore you owe me commitment. Or, I gave up my career for you, therefore you owe me the rest of your life. Or even, I bought you flowers and took you somewhere nice, therefore you should give me access to your body. The transaction can be emotional as well as material. For example, I listen to all your problems, therefore you should always prioritize mine. I supported you through your difficult period, so you have no right to leave me. I'm always there for you, so you don't get to disappoint me. That is where something quite subtle happens, giving someone an investment rather than an expression of love. And I think this connects directly to something I picked up from these videos. The men saying that they present themselves in a particular way to persuade a woman to invest in them while knowing that their real intentions are different. If someone deliberately performs a version of themselves in order to obtain something from another person, that's not intimacy. That's manipulation disguised as intimacy. Healthy relationships have exchanges that aren't necessarily transactional. If I cook dinner for you and you wash up, that's an exchange. If you earn more money and I contribute more domestically, we may have a perfectly healthy arrangement. If one person temporarily carries more because the other is ill, unemployed, studying, or struggling, that's not necessarily transactional either. Healthy relationships can involve reciprocity without keeping a ledger. The difference is the attitude underneath it. I'm not thinking I did 3 things for you, you owe me 3 things. I'm thinking we're on the same team at different times. One of us may carry more. And sex is where this becomes particularly important. A man tends to think, I take you out, buy you dinner, give you attention, behave romantically, therefore sex should follow. But that's not intimacy. That's purchasing access. And conversely, a woman might think I gave him sex, therefore he owes me marriage, financial security, or emotional commitment. That's transactional. Sex can be a part of intimacy, but sex doesn't create an entitlement to something else. That same applies to money. A man providing financially doesn't automatically purchase submission and obedience. Conversely, a woman contributing financially doesn't purchase control. The minute we start thinking, because I gave you X, you owe me Y, we're moving from mutuality towards transaction. Sometimes people don't transact with things, they transact with themselves. A woman might unconsciously think, if I become the perfect partner, don't complain, keep the house beautiful, look good, satisfy him sexually, support his ambitions and never ask for too much, he won't leave me. That's transactional thinking. She's effectively saying, I will perform this version of a woman and in return I expect security. And a man can do exactly the same. If I provide enough money, protect her, solve her problems and give her a comfortable life, she will never leave me. Again, I will provide these things and in turn I expect loyalty, admiration and submission. Neither person is necessarily consciously scheming. They may genuinely believe they are loving, but underneath the relationship is an unspoken contract. The videos were saying marriage is a contract, almost as though that proves marriage is inherently exploitative. But marriage is a legal contract. That's not controversial. The problem is that there is a contract. The problem isn't that there is a contract. The problem is when the legal contract becomes confused with the emotional relationship. You can have a legally binding marriage and still have two people who genuinely love, respect and care for one another. And you can have two unmarried people who are conducting their entire relationship like it's a business negotiation. So perhaps the real question isn't, is marriage transactional? It is, have we turned love into a transaction? Which are two completely different questions. A transaction says, I give you so I can get. Love says, I give you because I care. Healthy love doesn't mean giving endlessly without receiving. That's where people sometimes get confused. Love isn't, I will give everything and expect nothing. That's not necessarily love. Sometimes that's self-abandonment. Healthy love says, I don't keep score, but I do pay attention to whether this relationship is mutual. You can love somebody deeply and still say this relationship is costing me too much emotionally and financially. You can forgive somebody without allowing them continued access to you. You can care without rescuing. You can give without being exploited. And you can receive without becoming entitled. And that, I think, is the sweet spot. Intimacy is not the absence of exchange. It is the absence of entitlement. Marriage itself isn't disappearing, but it is changing. In England and Wales, the proportion of adults who were married or in civil partnerships fell from 58.4% in 1991 to 46.9% in 2021. While the proportion who had never married or entered a civil partnership rose from 26.3% to 37.9%. Yet marriage and couple relationships remain very much a part of people's lives. In 2025, 62.1% of adults aged 18 plus in England and Wales were living as a couple. So this isn't a story about men becoming unnecessary or women becoming unwilling to love. It is a story about people renegotiating what they expect a relationship to be. We need to remember that the quality of the relationship matters enormously. Research has associated positive marital relationships with health benefits, while conflict and hostility can have negative effects. Like I said earlier, if we are being taught to see the other sex as somebody we need to protect ourselves from, how can we ever recognize somebody we can safely love? We can't. So it's about observing and it's about protecting who you are and not giving yourself up. It's about being observant, really, and continue to be loving and caring and recognizing when you're feeling as though you're being exploited or taken for granted. And I guess that's all I can say on this for now. So in the meantime, you need to take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Don't get drawn in by the hype. And I'll see you soon. Take care for now. I'm Lady Loy, over and out.